Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on, well, a monumental task. We're trying to chart the career of an artist who doesn't just defy categorization.
You pretty much invented her own.
Exactly. We are diving deep into the extraordinary, decades-long, and, let's be honest, often fiercely controversial life of Whoopi Goldberg.
It's a huge undertaking. I mean, when you look at the source material we have here, her career has been relentlessly active. We're talking 1982 to the present.
That's over 40 years.
Over 40 years. And across every single medium you can think of. So our mission today is kind of complex. We need to unpack all these layers, analyze her path to achieving EGOT status, the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony.
Which is just incredible.
It's the grand slam of entertainment.
Yeah.
And we had to examine her impact moving, so seamlessly between prestige film, highbrow theater, raw stand-up, and then maybe most influentially, the daily spotlight of daytime TV. The sources don't show a straight line. They show a series of massive risks and seismic shifts.
And the hook here is just undeniable. It's historical. She's one of only 19 people, and that number includes composers and directors, not just performers, to get that competitive EGOT.
A tiny, tiny club.
But crucially, she is the first Black woman in history to earn that distinction. And then there's the sheer volume. The sources confirm she's been in over 150 films. To balance that kind of output with that top-tier prestige, well, that's the kind of career we need to understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the foundation, which is deeply unconventional. So before the EGOT, before The View, before any of it, there was Caryn Elaine Johnson,
Right.
born November 13th, 1955 in Manhattan. So as of 2025, she's turning 70. And her roots are just so deeply set in New York City's working class. She grew up in the Chelsea Elliott houses.
Which is a public housing project. And that background, it really provides the critical context for her resilience, her self-reliance. She was raised by a single mother, Emma Johnson.
A strong figure in her life.
Absolutely. Emma was a nurse and a teacher. Her father, Robert James Johnson Jr., was a Baptist clergyman. But her mom was really the central force. And we know she was raised Catholic, went to St. Columba's parochial school. But, well, the traditional school system just didn't hold her.
She dropped out of high school.
Dropped out of Washington Irving High School. And you can see this, anti-establishment streak right from the beginning. She wasn't looking for validation from conventional systems. She was always going to define her own path.
And the most immediate example of that is her name, the creation of Whoopi Goldberg. It's one of the most famous and, frankly, most hilarious anecdotes in Hollywood.
It really is. The whoopee part. It's from a whoopee cushion.
It's perfect. It just encapsulates her whole vibe. Unapologetic, a little bit shocking, totally down to earth. She said that when you're on stage, for a long time, things happen.
You can't always run to the bathroom.
Exactly. She said, if you get a little gassy, you've got to let it go. So people started saying to her, you're like a whoopee cushion, and that's where the name came from.
It's just the ultimate statement of owning the uncomfortable, which is really the foundation of her comedy. But then you couple that humorous nickname with the surname Goldberg, and that's where things get really complex culturally.
This is where the sources force us to look at this tension between a self-defined identity and, what's on paper genealogically.
Right.
Because in 2011, she was very public about it. She said Goldberg was part of her family, part of her heritage. She declared, I just know I am Jewish. I practice nothing.
She even challenged the premise, saying that if she were a white actress, people wouldn't question her.
Which is a really powerful point about the boxes we try to put Black artists in. But then the narrative gets more complicated, doesn't it?
It does. When we bring in the genealogical research, the sources point to the work of Henry Louis Gates Jr. in his 2006 PBS documentary, African American Lives.
And what did he find?
That research confirmed all of her traceable ancestors were Black. None were named Goldberg. And the DNA results actually traced her ancestry specifically to the Papal and Boyoti people of modern-day Guinea-Bissau.
So you have this really rich documented history. Her great-great-grandparents, William and Elsie Washington, homesteading land in Florida after the Civil War, which was incredibly rare.
A strong, documented African-American lineage. So why Goldberg? Well, one account suggests it was her mother, Emma, who felt their family name wasn't Jewish enough for her to become a star.
Which is a pretty cynical but maybe practical view of show business in the 70s and 80s.
And Whoopi herself has said an agent once tried to get her to change her name to something more Black, like Puddin'. She refused. So she stuck with Goldberg. It's this absolute rejection of external labels, whatever they are, in favor of a self-created identity.
And that independence, it seems like it was forged by necessity. Before she was Whoopi, she was Caryn Johnson, moving across the country, first to San Diego, then Berkeley. And the jobs she worked. It's an incredible list.
It really reads like a character development workshop, doesn't it? She was a waitress, a bank teller.
And famously, a mortuary cosmetologist, applying makeup to the deceased.
And a bricklayer. I mean, these aren't just quirky details. They showed this period of survival and self-training where she was engaging with every level of society. That absolutely fueled the characters she would later create.
And all during this time, she's honing her craft. She joins an avant-garde theater troupe, the Blake Street Hawkeyes, and she's teaching acting.
Which is amazing. The sources say a young Courtney Love was one of her students.
Incredible. So she's building the artist while living this really tough reality. But the sources also remind us this period involved, well, immense personal trauma.
A huge trauma. In 1978, in San Diego, she witnessed a midair collision of two planes. It was so shocking that she developed a profound fear of flying and PTSD.
And that's such a crucial counterpoint to her public image, right? This larger-than-life, hilarious personality was built not just through hard work, but through overcoming some really severe psychological hurdles.
That internal fortitude is what allowed her to handle what came next.
That is a perfect bridge, because all that background, the street smarts, the pain, the resilience, it all fed her art. But she channeled it through classical discipline.
Right. Before her solo shows blew up, she actually sought out formal training. She studied under the legendary acting teacher Uta Hagen at the HB studio in New York.
And that Uta Hagen training is so important, isn't it?
It's critical. It shows she wasn't just relying on raw talent. She was integrating that observational skill she learned on the streets and in those odd jobs with classical technique. That's what made her stage work so revolutionary.
And that work started getting national attention really quickly in the early 80s with her one-woman shows. She started with Moms, a tribute to the great Black comedian Moms Mabley.
And then came the Spook Show in 1983. And this was the turning point. It wasn't just stand-up. It was theater. It was these incredibly complex character monologues.
Like Fontaine.
Exactly. Fontaine, or this surfer chick whose kind of casual racism exposed these much deeper issues. She can embody anyone. Different ages, genders, identities. It proved her whole philosophy that she was an actor who could play anything.
And that show gets to Broadway, which was a huge deal, thanks entirely to a massive endorsement from one of the most respected directors out there, Mike Nichols.
You cannot overstate the importance of Mike Nichols.
Yeah.
He discovered her in San Francisco. The story is that he was so moved by her performance, he literally burst into tears.
Wow.
He got it immediately. And he became her mentor, helped transfer the show to Broadway in 1984, retitled simply Whoopi Goldberg.
Right.
This was the establishment giving its stamp of approval to her fiercely unconventional work.
And that paid off almost instantly. The recording of that show won her the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album in 1986.
The first piece of the EGOT puzzle.
And a major historical moment. She became the first Black female comedian ever to win that Grammy.
And then the jump from that Grammy-winning stage show to a leading role in a huge Hollywood film. It happened almost overnight, thanks to Steven Spielberg.
It's a completely unique trajectory. She didn't work her way up through small parts. She went straight to the top. Spielberg saw her perform at the Comedy Store.
And saw the dramatic depth under all that comedy and cast her. Just like that.
In The Color Purple, 1985, her debut film role playing Celie, and the reaction to her performance was just immediate and overwhelming. Roger Ebert called it one of the most amazing debut performances in movie history.
And the awards followed. She won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama. Think about that. She was the first Black actress ever to win that specific category.
On her first film.
On her very first film. It got her the Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. She was in the Pantheon instantly.
But then the next phase is a little harder to analyze. After that huge prestige debut, she becomes, as the sources say, the busiest female star from 85 to 88. She makes 7 films.
Jump Jack Flash, Burglar, Fatal Beauty.
Right. And many of them were commercial flops. So the question is, why did Hollywood keep casting her so relentlessly?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is that the prestige from The Color Purple was like a shield. It insulated her.
So even if the movies themselves weren't great, her presence, her Oscar nomination, it guaranteed a certain level of interest.
She was bankable in terms of publicity, even if the scripts were weak. And while this was happening, she was also cementing her place in the mainstream by co-hosting Comic Relief on HBO.
With Robin Williams and Billy Crystal.
An iconic pairing. And that wasn't just a gig, it was a high-profile platform. It showed she could stand shoulder to shoulder with the biggest stars in comedy, bridging that gap between her theater background and her new film star status.
And all of that nonstop work set the stage perfectly for her true mainstream explosion in 1990.
The role that changed everything.
Oda Mae Brown in Ghost.
It was the perfect role. It blended her comedic timing, her observational skills, with the emotional depth she showed in The Color Purple.
And it secured her icon status. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress.
The historical significance there is just immense. She became only the second Black woman to win an acting Oscar, period, after Hattie McDaniel in 1940.
And the first Black woman to win Best Supporting Actress in nearly 50 years.
And it wasn't a fluke. She won the BAFTA and the Golden Globe for that role, too. The character was so beloved, Premiere Magazine later named Oda Mae Brown one of the top 100 best film characters ever.
Yeah.
So now she has the Oscar, and the 1990s become about her transformation from a film star into this universal multi-genre presence. She was actively crossing every media border she could find.
And there's no better proof of that than her jumping into the world of Star Trek.
Right. Taking on the recurring role of Guinan in Star Trek, The Next Generation. This was not a typical move for an Oscar-nominated actress at the time.
Not at all. She was embracing fan culture, genre TV, and it's a role she loved so much she reprised it in films and then decades later in Star Trek, Picard.
After Patrick Stewart publicly invited her on The View, it shows her understanding of modern celebrity. It's not just about prestige, it's about connection with an audience. And then commercially, she just hits this absolute peak with Sister Act.
A global phenomenon. The first one, in 1992, grossed over $200 million.
Which is huge. And that success translated directly into earning power. For the sequel, Sister Act 2, her salary was estimated between $7 and $12 million.
Which, the sources confirm, likely made her the highest paid actress in the world at that time.
That's real A-list power. Not just critical acclaim, but economic clout. And that power let her diversify into other areas, like voice work.
She becomes a major voice talent. Shenzi the hyena in The Lion King.
Scratch in Toy Story 3. She was building this career that was almost critic-proof because she was just everywhere, culturally ubiquitous.
And that mainstream acceptance led to one of the biggest prestige gigs in entertainment, hosting the Academy Awards.
In 1994, she becomes the first Black woman ever to host the Oscars. That single moment says so much about her acceptance by the industry, not just as an actor, but as a voice for Hollywood itself.
And it wasn't a one-off. She hosted 4 times, 94, 96, 99, and 2002. And she's widely regarded as one of the best hosts ever. That comfort with live high-stakes TV, it was the perfect training for what was to come.
It really was.
Which brings us to the core of this deep dive, the ego completion. She gets it done in 2002, one of only 19 people. But we need to really break down how she did it because her path is unique.
It is. And we should be clear, these are all competitive awards, not honorary, all 4. The chronology tells the story.
Okay, so first was the Grammy.
The Grammy is 1986 for her comedy album. That shows her brilliance as a writer and performer.
Then the Oscar.
The Oscar in 1991 for Ghost, confirming her mainstream appeal. And then the Tony in 2002. And this is the crucial part.
It wasn't for acting, was it?
No. It was as a producer of the Best Musical, Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Okay, let's stop on that. A producer Tony. For you, the listener, why is that distinction so important? What does that signify?
It signifies control. It signifies business acumen. An acting Tony proves you've mastered performance. A producer Tony means you mastered the business of the show, you got the financing, you managed the team, you brought a massive production to Broadway. It shows she shifted from being a hired talent to owning the content.
That is a powerful distinction. And the final piece?
The final piece was the Emmy. She actually has 2, but the one that sealed the EGOT was a Daytime Emmy in 2002 for producing the documentary Beyond Tara, The Extraordinary Life of Hattie McDaniel.
So she wins her EGOT clinching award for producing a doc about the very first Black Oscar winner. That feels intentional.
Oh, absolutely. It links her own legacy directly to cinematic history. But the key fact remains. She is the first Black woman in history to achieve the competitive EGOT, complete dominance.
And even with all that success, she never abandoned the stage. She kept going back. She replaced Nathan Lane in The Port. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum on Broadway.
Stepping into a male lead role in a Sondheim musical. I mean, again, proving your point about being an actor who can play anything. And then in 2003, she starred in August Wilson's Mulroney's Black Bottom. To go from Sondheim comedy to the gravitas of August Wilson, that's just astonishing range.
And the sources highlight her recent stage return. After a 15-year break, she comes back as Miss Hannigan in Annie. And the reviews were ecstatic. The New York Times called her a holiday gift. She can still command the medium that started it all. So if the 90s were about film dominance, the last, 15-plus years have been completely defined by her role as moderator of The View.
A role she took in 2007, replacing Rosie O'Donnell. And this show, it became her central platform. It magnified her voice, her celebrity, and, well, her capacity for controversy.
Her debut was a big deal for daytime TV, drew 3.4 million viewers, ratings jumped 7%. She quickly established herself as the anchor, guiding the conversation.
And that command earned her and the other co-hosts a daytime Emmy for Outstanding Talk Show Host in 2009.
But the format of that show, daily, live, unscripted debate on really sensitive topics, it exposed her to a level of scrutiny her film career never did. And we have to navigate this part carefully.
Yes. Based on the sources, it's crucial we report these incidents impartially. It's about analyzing the pattern of her remarks and the public's reaction.
Let's start with an early one. Before The View even, 2004, at a fundraiser for John Kerry, she made a very provocative sexual joke about President George W. Bush.
The fallout was immediate and financial. Slim Fast, who she was a spokesperson for, dropped her instantly. It was an early warning sign that her raw, stand-up style of humor carried real professional risks.
And then came this series of comments on The View that became massive news stories. There's a pattern to them, isn't there?
There is. It's often characterized by this demand for legal proof or a reliance on a kind of street-level rationalization.
Like in 2007 with Michael Vick's dogfighting case, her initial defense was that it was a result of his cultural upbringing,
which drew huge backlash. Then in 2009, she's talking about Roman Polanski's rape conviction, and she says it wasn't rape.
a phrase that just exploded.
Exploded. She later clarified she was trying to distinguish between statutory and forcible rape, a legal nuance that was totally lost. But using language like rape is a classic example of her bringing this unfiltered, street-smart rhetoric to a very sensitive topic.
And with the Bill Cosby allegations, her position actually shifted over time.
It did. Initially, she defended him, asking why he hadn't been arrested or tried if the allegations were true. She was prioritizing due process. But in 2015, she completely reversed her stance. She said the information emerging kind of points to guilt. And she explicitly supported removing the statute of limitations for rape.
So she showed she was willing to change her mind when faced with new information.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the controversy that actually led to a suspension. The Holocaust comments in 2022.
Right. She said on air that the Holocaust was not based on race, but was about man's inhumanity to man, adding it was white people doing it to white people.
The backlash was immediate and widespread. Jewish organizations pointed out that Nazi ideology was entirely based on racial classification. She apologized on Twitter, then on air. But then, in an interview later that day, she seemed to double down on the idea, which complicated her apology.
And ABC suspended her from The View for 2 weeks.
It was a clear signal that even an EGOT winner isn't immune to corporate consequences for crossing certain cultural lines.
But what often gets lost in these flare-ups is her decades of consistent activism.
Relentless activism. She's a huge advocate for human rights, moderating panels at the UN. Her commitment to LGBTQ+ rights goes all the way back to the 1987 March on Washington. She won the GLA Vanguard Award in 1999.
She's been involved with Cyndi Lauper's Give a Damn campaign, spoken out for trans rights, spoken at the Women's March.
And then, just to keep everyone on their toes, she stated in 2012 that she is a member of the NRA.
Which makes her impossible to categorize politically. She just refuses to fit in a box.
And that complexity extends to her business ventures. She's become an entrepreneur.
Especially in the cannabis industry. She co-founded Whoopi and Maya in 2016.
A company focused specifically on medical cannabis products for women with menstrual cramps. It's based on her own experience. The venture ended in 2020, but she immediately pivoted.
Launched a new line in 2021 called Emma and Clyde, named for her late mother and brother. It shows she learns from market failures and ties her personal history to her business.
And she's still innovating. Just in June 2025, she co-founded AWSN, an all-women sports network. It just confirms she's still using that producer's mind, remember that, Tony Wynn, to create new platforms for underserved audiences.
When you delve into her personal life, you see that same theme of independence,
Right.
A rejection of traditional structures. She's been married 3 times.
And Alvin Martin, David Klassen, and Lyle Trachtenberg.
But what's fascinating is how she talks about it now. She's very clear. No plans to marry again. She believes some people, including herself, are just not meant to be married.
She even said in an interview she was never in love with the men she married. Her real commitment, she says, is to her family and her work, not a spouse, which just reinforces that narrative of self-reliance we've seen all along.
We also have to talk about the Ted Danson blackface incident in 1993. This was a massive cultural flashpoint.
A huge one. It was at the Friars Club roast for him, and he was her partner at the time. He appeared in full blackface telling racially charged jokes. The backlash was, immediate and fierce.
And what made it so complicated was Whoopi's defense of him.
Not only did she stand by him, she admitted she wrote some of the jokes. She insisted the context of a roast made it acceptable.
How is that interpreted?
In two completely opposite ways. To some, it was betrayal. To her, it seemed to be a defense of artistic freedom, of pushing boundaries with comedy, just like she did in the Spook Show. The fallout was negative, but she prioritized her creative choice and her partner over public opinion.
And through all the drama, her focus has remained on her family. She has one daughter, Alexandria Martin,
who is an actress and producer, and Whoopi is now a grandmother of 3 and a great-grandmother.
She's also been incredibly candid about her personal struggles, which is rare for a celebrity of her stature.
Very candid. Admitting she smoked marijuana right before accepting her Oscar for Ghost, talking about being a functioning drug addict.
And she's open about her health. She has dyslexia, which makes her career even more remarkable. And in 2019, she had a near-fatal battle with pneumonia and sepsis. Doctors gave her a 30% chance of survival.
She is a survivor in the most literal sense.
And she's been a powerful voice on abortion rights, tying it directly to her own history. She revealed she had 6 or 7 abortions by age 25, including one with a coat hanger when she was 14.
And she continues to speak out, even making provocative religious claims, saying God would support abortion rights because God gave women freedom of choice. She's always comfortable challenging orthodoxies.
When you look at her influences, you see that same breadth. Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Moms Mabley.
But also Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. But the most important origin story is the one Nichelle Nichols told, about a young Whoopi seeing Uhura on Star Trek and yelling, "Mama, there's a black lady on television and she ain't no maid."
That moment, seeing a black woman in a position of power, it seems like it informed her entire career.
Absolutely. It leads directly to her philosophy about being an actor, not an actress.
Her famous quote, "An actress can only play a woman. I'm an actor. I can play anything."
And she has spent 40 years proving that point. Her legacy is cemented, named a Disney legend, the first African-American female to win the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, and of course the EGOT. She's one of the most decorated and independently minded figures in entertainment history. Hashtag tag outro.
So we've traced Caryn Johnson from her start as a bricklayer and mortuary cosmetologist in New York public housing to becoming the icon, Whoopi Goldberg, a trailblazing EGOT winner, a 4-time Oscar host, and the lightning rod voice of daytime television.
And what we've learned today is that she's a relentless artist who mastered every single medium. And she did it by insisting on her own definitions of her name, her roles, her public statements. Her career model is one of pure self-definition and perseverance.
So what does this all mean for you? We've seen her move from serious award-winning drama like The Color Purple to broad comedy like Sister Act to polarizing, unscripted debate on The View. Considering that constant high-wire act, her reliance on raw, sometimes offensive honesty, what singular defining quality allows Whoopi Goldberg to continually reinvent herself while remaining one of the most decorated and polarizing figures in American entertainment? What does her unique staying power tell us about the boundaries, or maybe the lack of boundaries, for celebrity in the 21st century? That's a deep dive that will keep you thinking. We'll see you next time.